Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal. How to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
And welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And today's show, Jack and I explore the almost predictable inward shift that occurs on the journey from the material to the spiritual. Based on our own journeys, as well as our experience with hundreds of clients, we examine what does it mean to move inwards? What are the range of catalysts for this shift or spiritual experience? And how being in service to others is both completely consistent with this shift as well as completely at odds with it, and why context matters. This and so much more over the next hour. But just a reminder for live viewers, the show is open to questions in the second half. So throw your questions in the chat or call us at 1-800-930-2819. Let's start a bit differently this time.
Mm-hmm. I have to just say first that your introduction this time was amazing. And I'm so amazed actually at your capacity to be able to take what we talk about and distill it into an opening. You do that really beautifully.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That being said, it was based on our conversation we've had over the last few weeks. And just the other day, you read me a few paragraphs of a book that you're reading, which is probably prompting a lot of our conversations, that I thought was a perfect foundation for our topic this week. Do you mind sharing that with our listeners?
No problem. I actually read it to you this morning.
Was it this morning? Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go back actually 2 paragraphs from what I started with, because I think it'll give some context.
First of all, what book is this?
Yeah, I was just about to share it. It's called A Parentheses in Eternity by Joel S. Goldsmith. And a teacher and dear friend of mine recommended that I read it, and I'm loving it. Okay, so it says, the great masters who brought forth the original teachings upon which modern religions are built knew that there were invisible laws governing this world. And they taught man how to bring harmony to himself through an understanding of these laws, promising, as the master did, that those who follow in this way would bear fruit richly. In other words, they'd be working with the laws of life instead of working in antagonism to them. In their gross human ignorance, most persons accept the appearance that they have come into this world with nothing. Working from that basis, almost from the beginning, they try to add to themselves. Whether it's a baby trying to take some other baby's rattle away, or whether it's a nation trying to take some other nation's land or industry away from it. Most persons live their lives on the assumption that they have nothing, and therefore they must get something to work for it, plan and plot for it. And this is where you were talking about. Then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish, things which after they are obtained prove to be shadows. It's at this stage that some persons turn from the seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. That which they have not heretofore succeeded in gathering to themselves by material means, they now hope to get from God. Even though this is only a faint glimpsing of the path, it is at least an opening wedge, because it does turn some people from the expectation that they can get from the material world that which will satisfy, to the belief in some invisible source from or through which their good may come. Those who fail to find God an open door to health, wealth, and success are naturally led to seek further for the way, or to seek the meaning of the way. Do you want me to keep going, or that's good?
One more paragraph.
It's not given to a human being of himself to decide when or whether he will enter the path or the way. And until the Spirit of God touches a person, he has no interest in finding it, and certainly no inclination to follow it. In the life of every person, however, and not necessarily in this particular lifetime or lifespan, at some time or other, he will be touched by the Spirit. He may never know when this actually happens. All he knows is that a curiosity has developed within him, a hunger or a thirst for something. He knows not what that drives him forward. It is at such a moment that he enters the path, and from that point on does not lie within his power to decide to what extent he will embrace it or how far he will go.
Perfect. And I think that was the paragraph in particular that really got to me this morning in relation to what we've been talking about. And a lot of what is in there is this concept of starting off on this material journey, and somewhere something happens that leads us to more of a spiritual journey.
Yeah, you're reminding me a little bit of, there's John O'Donohue, who's a beautiful poet, and he wrote a poem in a book called To Bless the Space Between Us on longing. And he speaks to that deep longing that exists within us to connect with something greater than us. And it's something that comes often as a whisper, unless you're someone like you, and it comes very loudly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why did we decide to have this conversation today? What about, because most of these podcasts, for those of you that don't know this, really they stem from conversations that Chris and I have, either sitting on the couch or walking in the forest. They come from our own musings, and then we end up realizing that we're having some pretty powerful conversations that make us both think, and then we want to share them to encourage some thought or curiosity. And this one has really stuck with us for quite a few days. Yeah.
Yeah. So where did it come from? Why?
Yeah.
I think the genesis of it was probably about a week or even 2 weeks ago. Like we were just got back from a family vacation, but we were having some of these conversations on the vacation. I just remember one sitting there where you're asking or reflecting on this feeling that you keep getting pulled inwards. It really, it's been your whole life to a certain extent, but it really picked up last year, around this time, or even before this time. But just even more recently, you're really feeling this pull where noticing, wait a minute, these external dramas that are showing up, or the external things that are happening that just 6 months ago were pulling you in and bothering you, they're just not affecting you anymore. And you're finding yourself more and more moving inwards in response to them, or just in general. I think that's where this idea came. Do you want to maybe you can describe what is that inward move you're talking about, or we're talking about?
I'll try.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to describe because it's sort of ineffable. I think it really did start for me. I think on some levels it has been my whole life, but I think in the last year and a half, it's really picked up. And, it's interesting. It's something that happened for you very, very quickly. And for a long time, I always looked at you with curiosity and sort of a bit of a question, like, is it possible that in one fell swoop, all of a sudden this door just opens? Because my door has been opening very, very slowly. But as my door continues to open, and I'll speak to what that is in a moment, what I'm realizing is really this idea that we've talked about many times, which is, for some of us, we're brought to a place where we have no option but to have the door open or move on from this world at this time anyways. And then there's others of us that are sort of more a little bit tortoise-like, who take a slow path. But I think that once that path starts, it is one that is really, it's very hard to control in terms of shutting it off. So I think for me, when we moved to Calgary last year for a few months to be with Layla, I stepped away. It was sort of perfect timing. I had stepped away from teaching every day to a big community of people, and stepped away then from all of my friends and social commitments, and ended up in a place where we knew nobody. And so inevitably, well, I guess maybe not inevitably, I had an opportunity to go really quiet. And I felt like it was the greatest gift that had ever been given to me, because I was too busy in my life to be able to actually have that opportunity. And I think over the course of this last year, a number of different things happened for me that brought me sort of face to face with some really big pieces of work for me, with family of origin stuff, with children's stuff, with core belief things. And it was almost like my experience was that the world kept showing me the places that were in the way of me surrendering completely, showing me the places where there was constriction in my life. And at a different time in my life, my natural response to those things would have been to armor, react, get defensive. And I'm not saying that I didn't do those things, because of course I did on some level, but not to the level that I had in the past. There was more of an interest in facing and softening than there was to fighting those things. So, in this book that I'm reading, and in many of the conversations you and I have had in the past, there's conversations about this idea where your ego needs to die every day. And it's sort of, this whole year and a half has been very much what feels like ego death over and over and over again. But what it's doing is opening a door to something that I've been longing for always. And so I'm finding this deep, deep pull to go inside. And part of where our conversation really started was this noticing. Actually, I think a piece of it, if I'm to be really honest, it started with this noticing around social media, and everybody posting the offerings that they have, the experiences that they're having, the testimonials of other people that are sort of giving them feedback to their experiences, and this real awareness inside of me of two things. One, the part of my ego that has yet to die is going, shit, should I be posting more? Should I be doing more?
What am I doing wrong here?
Yeah. Do I need to be doing all of these things? But the bigger voice inside of me has said repeatedly, your work is to become nobody. Your work is to become nobody. And I'm watching how that work of becoming nobody is showing up as I'm disappearing from this big world outside. And my inner world is becoming the biggest draw that I have. I can't wait for the moments that I have to go inside and be quiet. And that world is becoming really exciting to me.
You said a couple things in that I found. I'm going to relate this thing, finding this thing you've always been longing for, and becoming nobody. Are those the same things?
I think that the thing that I have always been longing for that I wasn't able to speak to was a deep connection to the divine. And becoming nobody, I think in a lot of ways is the way through, because because our need to be somebody actually gets in the way of us connecting with who we really are.
Yeah. And I would say, for listeners who don't know, that represents to me the way you said that is a real shift for you in the last little while, is recognizing, like, I remember we'd have these debates about how important the ego is and whatnot. And I'm in more of a place, I don't think the ego's, I don't want it anymore. And I think you've always thought, well, we need some ego and this and that. And I think now you see more and more that the ego is so destined on trying to be something or be someone or be separate, that it's getting in the way of what being nobody is, which is being part of the oneness.
I think the ego is so set on being special.
Yes.
and being recognized as special, that what happens is that then gets in the way of us being able to access the wholeness of who we are, because being special necessitates us being separate from.
Yeah. Special, different, unique, all of these things, which I think we're in a sense, in a very materialistic egoic society, we're taught to actually value those things. And I would say even more recently, I think there's even more value placed in those things. And in a sense, it feels like that's taken us the wrong direction. Because I tend to find that people on this journey that are going inside are seeking to shed all their specialness, all their uniqueness, and all their difference, recognizing I'm the same as everyone.
And the world outside is showing us in a lot of ways the polarities that are showing up in the world, in the political world, in the medical world, in the healthcare world, in the diversity, equity, and inclusion world. What's happening is that we're separating everything rather than actually recognizing our common humanity. We are separating ourselves more and more and more. And ultimately, what that's leading to is more and more conflict and war, because that's actually not the direction we're meant to be going in.
And I would even, without trying to politicize it, and I don't want to, it's just pointing out that the feedback mechanism for this move towards more separateness has been greater mental health issues, more people on SSRIs, all these things. So the feedback mechanism of this movement is actually showing the opposite results. The more we separate ourselves, the more we feel unique, the less connected we become to this idea that we're all the same in oneness, and the more dis-ease then shows up in our individually and collectively in society.
Yeah, and the more drama we create.
Of course.
So a big piece of this for me over the last 9 months, actually maybe more over the last 4 months, was around family dynamics, and recognizing how much drama family dynamics awoke inside of me. And this this place, and I shared it in a previous podcast, of a tremendous amount of pain that led me to a place of deep surrender. And in that place of deep surrender, what I got to was this vast capacity to love. And in the presence of that, all of the noise that's happening outside no longer seems to have the same impact.
Can you walk that's a really interesting process. Pain, surrender, love. That doesn't seem intuitive. Can you walk our listeners through that? Walk me through it.
Sure. We went as a family to Iceland, and we had a fabulous trip. And then at the end of that trip, there was some tremendous conflict. And that conflict led me to a place of feeling more pain than I've felt in a long time. It really, really shook me. And I was resisting, and I was hurting, and I felt triangulated. And I remember, and I did share this on a previous podcast, lying in bed in Montreal. And I was really suffering, and I just said, I'm going to give it up to you. God, universe, whatever you believe in, it doesn't really matter.
Just not you.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm going to hand it over. And in the handing of it over, one of the things that happened for me was this opening. And it was an opening for my son, actually. This place of loving him differently, this place of recognizing that the drama that was being created was actually a mirror for me. And it was a mirror showing me where I had gotten in the way of being able to fully and completely love my own kid. And it wasn't shown to me from my child. It was shown to me through a sister. But I got to see where I was actually in the way. And something shifted in a big way for me Like I had access all of a sudden to a tremendous amount of compassion and to a tremendous amount of trust that my kid's path was my kid's path and that I wasn't responsible for it. Neither did I have a say in how he lived his life, but that for me, God, for you, the universe, God, whatever you want to talk about, had him and me. And something shifted. And so I was quite nervous actually heading out on our vacation over Christmas because I was going to be in and amongst that same dynamic. Mm-hmm. And this time I was a witness watching the dynamic rather than a participant. I got to see and watch behaviors and observe and watch judgments, and they didn't impact me because I was operating from a different place. And actually, in some ways, they were a huge gift because, again, I got deeper access to my kid and deeper access to, how would I say it? I think I'll say it this way. That which was in the way of me being able to access the truth of who I am was cleared enough that so much truth was able to come through, that I was able to sit with my son in this expansive space that created, that allowed flow to happen. And it felt magical. And I don't know if that translates completely for you as an audience. If it doesn't, maybe you can ask me more questions to help me.
Can you describe that space? I think we're getting somewhere. Like, describe what's in that space that was different, or what wasn't in that space. That could be either.
There was the capacity to listen really deeply without the need to fix or change or guide or be right. There was a deep curiosity, and fierce gentleness, a fierce gentleness and openness to listen and to get curious and to create an opportunity for my son to listen to himself.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. And you asked me yesterday or the day before or somebody did actually. No, my friend Haley did. What was the best part of your trip? And it was that conversation. Mm-hmm. It was a conversation that started because there was a tremendous amount of conflict going on between my son and my dad. And I sat outside with him afterwards. And 3 months ago, it would have blown up and exploded. I would have taken his reactivity. I would have taken it personally. I would have wanted to shift the way he was behaving because it was
you now suddenly.
Well, and also I would have judged his behavior as inappropriate and wrong and too big and too reactive. And instead, it can't feel really nice to be in a body that's super reactive. So what was it that I could do to sit and create space to allow him to come back into himself? And that was an entirely different approach to parenting, but it was an entirely different approach to being. And it left me in this place where, we often hear people say, you're only as healthy as your least healthy kid. And that made me always feel really sad, but I kind of resonated with it because when one of my kids was struggling, I wore it. And this time I sat there and I listened to that, that thought came into my head and I was like, oh God, no way. No way am I only as happy as my least happy kid. Because what that does is this idea of empathy as we hold it. If I'm only as happy as my least happy kid, then if my kid's in the ditch, I've jumped in with him.
Yep.
And I'm
somehow your suffering is going to heal him.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm of zero service to him. Right. And we're not of service to each other if that's what we do. We can't wear each other's pain.
Well, this goes right into like this idea of the journey from the material to spiritual, which has, I don't know, it has this profound meaning for me. When I think in terms of the material, I think it's, we're controlling stuff, we're molding stuff, we're shaping stuff. That's us intervening on the world to make it a way we want it to be. That's the materialism of achieving. Whereas the spiritual, more about what's happening is happening. I'm not meant to control it. I'm meant to try to I'm meant maybe to try to understand why it's happening. And it's particularly true when it comes to things like struggles and pain and things to overcome. From a spiritual perspective, those things are complete gifts to us because it's the only way we're going to be able to grow. It's the only way to come to higher consciousness is through that suffering, through that pain, and through that struggle. And we know that applies to us, but it also equally applies to our children. And us coming in and saying there's a problem here that needs to be fixed is very material thinking, where the spiritual side of it is, oh, there's an obstacle in the way. That is the way. Now, how can I be of maximum service, reside in a place of unconditional love to then foster a container and environment for my child or my loved one, whoever, to go through it and get the lesson they're meant to be getting out of this. It is all for them. That's the spiritual aspect of it.
So I think there's an understanding that's developing for me. I'm just beginning to get it. I think this work is often really confusing. But this is what I'm beginning to understand. In the realm of the spiritual, if we want to call it, we'll call it that. Pain, suffering, disease, etc., is actually an expression to us of where there's constriction, where there's stuckness, where we are holding on to dear life in the world of the material, and where we're being invited to surrender. When we have surrendered, my sense is those things no longer need to be there, because in the surrender, we're in flow.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. And in the surrender, the self-surrender, it's it reframes it from the word pain or word struggling to it's happening. It's a happening. We're not labeling it. We don't need to label it anymore and identify it and call it good or bad. It's just surrender. This is what is happening. And I think that word, you sort of got caught on it too. Like that word spiritual means so many different things. I would just say not material. Anything that the aspects that are not material that exist at a higher plane or higher level that is sort of ineffable.
Yeah. But I think that there's what this doorway opens is also this possibility that when we have, and I'll use me as an example, like I still have a tremendous amount of pain in my body, but my relationship with that pain is really changing over time. Now the pain for me that's in my neck and down my arms and whatever else I'm no longer connecting it to which vertebrae is creating strain on which nerve. It's more a question of where am I still in the way?
Yes.
Where am I still in the way? And not what do I need to do to get out of my way, but how can I soften enough to listen to what that pain is trying to tell me? And I really have this sense that the more I can do that, the more the pain no longer serves a purpose, the more it no longer needs to be here.
Yeah, it's a shift in relating to it. Again, it's on a material plane, and we'll come back to this in a bit. But the material plane, signified by the cross, is the horizontal, and the spiritual plane is the vertical. And when we're on the material plane and we have pain, it's like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Or maybe I can fix it by doing something. But I'm more of that spiritual plane. It's like everything is for me, and anything that happens is through me. And that it sounds subtle, but that is a tremendous shift in the way to view life, and it relieves all the suffering by just that reframe. Yeah. And why don't we take a break there?
Sounds like a good idea. We'll see you again soon.
Tune in to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living with me, Jacqueline.
And me, Chris, on Transformation Talk Radio, every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and to heal, and how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Witness the field of potential that arises when you take personal responsibility and become the divine creator in your own life.
Visit theway-healing.com for more information.
Welcome to Shanti Mission, a school for the soul. If you're seeking personal transformation, deeper spiritual awareness, sacred music, or the support of a welcoming community, Shanti Mission offers signature workshops and healing programs in a warm and inclusive space, designed for growth and connection. For more information and to access free resources, visit shantimission.org. Together, we can anchor peace.
Looking for more love, joy, and purpose in your life? Lisa Eve is here to guide you. Through intuitive support, healing, and soulful travel, she empowers you to embrace self-love as the key to happiness. Explore her book, The Love Channel, Finding Your Way to Happiness, available on Amazon. And find daily inspiration at thehappychannel.com. Start living your most radiant, joy-filled life today.
Want a speaker who can inspire your audience and keep them laughing and learning all in the same moment? I'm Erica Gummany, and that's exactly what I hope to do when blending personal stories, deeper spiritual insights, and practical wisdom with a whole lot of humor that keeps everyone engaged. My intention is to create safe, transformative spaces where real growth and connection happen. Book me to speak or facilitate something amazing at yourpivotalpoint.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Before we continue, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge a comment that we got from June from Ohio and say thank you. June was sharing that she was really appreciating that we were sharing real life moments, and that we were teaching from a place of our learning rather than from a place of sitting on a pedestal. And I just want to say that that's one of the most important things to both Chris and I in terms of our work, is really teaching from the standpoint of walking our own paths, because we can't really teach from any other place. You know, there are thousands and thousands of books out there with thousands of experts on different subjects. And book learning is great, but we don't gather wisdom from book learning. We gather wisdom from experiencing the shit of our everyday lives and finding our way through it. And yeah, it means a lot to be acknowledged in that way, June, because I think it's probably one of the most important values that we carry, and hopefully something that differentiates us in terms of how we speak and what we share. So please, if any of you have any thoughts or comments about how these experiences are showing up in your life, or any of the learnings that you've had throughout your lives, and you want to share them in relation to what we're speaking to, please do, because we're also really open to learning from you.
Well said.
Thanks.
I think we said in the first half, it really sounds like what we're saying is that this journey from material to spiritual, the requirement is going inwards. Is there any other way to do it? And why inwards?
I can only speak for
From your own
myself
experience, of course.
and from my own experience. I think going inwards is the only way through. And for me, that experience starts with the body. Right? Your experience is different, and I think that we should turn some of our attention to yours as well. But for me, our minds, again, and we've said this so many times, our minds are so tricky, because they will lead us to what we want to believe. We will seek what we want to see. Our bodies do things really differently. Our bodies have really great ways of being able to say yes towards something, of being able to say no towards something. Our body speaks really cleanly. And for me, my experience has been that when I turn toward my body, what I'm able to garner is where I'm constricted, where I'm tight, where I'm reactive, where I'm defensive. And from that standpoint, be able to ask, what's that about? Right? And often what it's about is me fighting to, how would I say this? If I have a core belief, I'll give you one example, that being strong and being capable and being able to be okay is essential to my well-being, then I'm going to fight to be okay in every situation. I'm going to fight to be a rock. I'm going to do whatever I need to shut down whatever I need to in order to hold that position. And that was a big deal for me for a long time. And then all of a sudden, my insides started to crumble. That structure didn't work for me anymore. And I remember, and I think I shared this once a long time ago too, having a conversation with my mom, and it was about dating. And she said, God, you sound really needy. And that word would have killed me 6 months before that conversation. And I remember saying to her, that's because I have needs. And I kind of giggled, but it was like that structure had just begun to crumble. And so the only way that I could get there was by facing myself and by starting to see what structures I had put in place to protect my ego that were no longer serving me. The outside world is only going to reflect back to us what we put out. And we're only going to see what it is we're willing to see. But as we start to dismantle those ego structures that we've created to protect ourselves, and we put them in place for good reason. As those start to get dismantled, all of a sudden we start to have access to where there's true vulnerability, where there's pain, where there's stories that aren't true that we've told ourselves that we can begin to address. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. And I'd say, like, a lot of similarities in there. In my own experience, which was, you mentioned before we talked the podcast, it was more of I call it a sudden conversion, to use that type of language. And it was, I found myself at this place where rapidly and quickly I shifted my perspective on the world, as I'd been in a psychosis. And in psychosis, I hope no one ever has to experience it, but it is so unbelievably real. You don't know you're in psychosis. I mean, that's the definition of mental illness. You don't know you're in it. But I look back at it now, and the thoughts I had, that they were so wildly crazy of what I thought was going on around me and the people in my life and things that were happening, were so wild relative to reality. But in the moment, I thought they were real. And that forced me to completely surrender my belief system at that point in time, because I knew it was, I got to this place where I knew it was flawed, and I knew I had to give it all up. So I let go of all my beliefs. And once I came out of psychosis, I could really begin to see that I'd probably been living my whole life in a different type of psychosis, which I'll just call my conditioning, where my belief systems, the things I thought I was supposed to do and what I believed, were actually also shaping my perception of the world around me. I became to see that what I was seeing in this material reality was nothing but, again, like a little movie projector in my head, fanning out what I wanted to see based on my belief systems. And I realized, well, the projector's broken in a sense, because this isn't real. And the only way I'm going to get a handle on what's going on is to go inside and look like, what's the program behind this? What's the conditioning? What are these experiences in my life that is leading me to see the world the way it is? And until I understand those things and know myself in that way, everything I'm going to see is going to be corrupted in some way or another. I mean, it could be positively, could be negatively, but it's not truth. And I've got this place where I've started to see what truth was. I started to feel that. And that was this process where I really wanted to let go of the material and move into the spiritual.
You know, and I listened to you and I would say your experience was horrific. And the awareness that came from it was incredibly powerful. But every single one of us, whether we have, whether we're brought to our knees, whether we're brought to the edge of, you know, whether we're walking that fine line between reality and not reality, every single one of our projectors is broken. And maybe broken's not the right word, but every single one of us is seeing the world through beliefs that we adopted when we were really small to protect ourselves. And when we begin to see that that's not actually real, that we're creating a reality to prove those thoughts, then the possibility exists to create some kind of shift. Right? But for most of us, unfortunately, it takes us being brought to a place of a marriage falling apart, sickness showing up, a job loss, the loss of a home, something big, the death of a loved one, for us to get to a place where we're willing to bring those things into question. And what we're trying to share with you in a lot of ways is that we don't need to go there necessarily in order to be able to open to this world. But we do need to take stock of where we are. And we do need to begin to take personal responsibility for ourselves and recognize in many ways that the answer to our questions, or the peace that actually sits underneath the surface of everything, lies underneath our, like the answer is in our defenses. The answer is in our reactivity, because whatever it is we're defending, or whatever it is that we're reacting to, the answer sits there. It doesn't sit outside in the person who's doing it. It doesn't sit outside in your husband or your wife or your kid changing their behavior or becoming different. You've drawn those people into your life for a reason. We all have. We've attracted exactly what we need to break free. And so our relationship with what's happening in our lives needs to shift if we actually want to experience harmony.
Yeah, it's, you know, in a way I relate to that in sort of in my own language, is this idea that all our discomfort from, you know, the outside it's the ego's belief system is being challenged, right? And the ego is a survival system that is trying to keep us safe in the world by ensuring that our belief system is right. So when we get angry at a different set of beliefs, or mad at this someone because they believe that, that's our ego trying to protect our belief systems. But the only thing I've learned relates to me is that all my beliefs are wrong, or not wrong. They're just not true. And it's sort of this, it's not necessarily true, not true. It can be both, but they've been formulated to keep me safe, and I probably shouldn't rely on them. The single greatest thing that I've learned to do in this whole process is to just admit I don't know. And so if someone wants to come to me and say 2 + 2 = 5, I'm like, perfect, enjoy your day. Like I'm not going to get in an argument with the person because it doesn't matter. And maybe it is. Maybe my belief that 2 + 2 = 4 is wrong, but I'm not going to allow different beliefs and different ways of seeing the world impact me and affect me anymore, because I can't change them and I don't learn from them. And when it does irritate me and create discomfort, I know now that's a place to look closely at. What am I holding on to there? What have I not let go of? What am I not surrendering that I'm probably doing out of fear to keep me safe? That there's an opportunity now to release even more burden and to get to more at peace with the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about an example that's I'll leave names and stories and all the rest of it out of it, but I'm thinking of an example that's so simple that hopefully all of you can relate to. Is think about an experience in your life. I was having a conversation with someone this morning about something that is creating a tremendous amount of resentment in you because you're being asked to do something that you don't want to do. And so being asked to do something that you don't want to do, but you're going to do it anyways because you've been taught to be the good girl or a good boy, or you've been taught to make other people more important than you, or you've been taught that your needs don't matter, or those are the beliefs that you've actually, that life has, presented you with, and you've taken them on as yours. And there's so much struggle. And I was talking to this person, and there's so much drama around it, when in essence, it takes 2 seconds to say, no, that doesn't work for me. And 2 minutes of real discomfort on the other side of that, as somebody may not like what you have to say. But the other side of it, of being the good girl, of doing all of the things that are aligned with the beliefs that you've been carrying your whole life, actually creates massive resentment and massive drama. And what we're offering through our conversation is the opportunity to really listen, to go quiet inside, to befriend your own inner voice, which then gives you access to a much greater voice, and honor what it speaks. Forget about the outside world. The outside world has all of its own stories. Our job isn't to align with each other. And this is a people pleaser talking to you. Our job is to align with what's true for us. Because if we can tap into what feels most free and true for us, then ultimately everyone around us is served. Because if I'm in alignment with myself and what's true for me, then I'm inviting you to experience whatever it is you need to experience for yourself. You spoke about the cross before.
I'm just thinking that as you're talking, of going up. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to the horizontal first, and then maybe you can speak to going up, because going up is really about aligning with truth. Okay?
Yeah.
The horizontal, which we speak about in terms of, relating to each other, it's interesting because the horizontal in yoga, when we talk about the auric field, what we're talking about is the field of energy that exists around our body an arm's length around us. That's also the horizontal, right? And most of us are so connected to everyone else that the field of energy, which can be measured around our body, so it's not just this fluffy kind of idea, has holes in it all over the place. And those holes allow us we feed each other, we take care of each other, we're meeting each other's needs, we're paying attention to everything that's happening out here, but we're not actually taking responsibility for that field of energy around our body and ensuring that it's not solid. What's the word? That it's intact. Mm-hmm. It's essential that that field of energy around our body is intact. And so the horizontal, perhaps if we were to see it differently, is not about interacting with each other and each other's needs. It's about making sure that our energy field is strong enough to give us the capacity to connect vertically.
Yeah, and this ties into, like, at least the way I perceive the vertical, and in all religions, it's pointing up, and it's not pointing to man in the sky. To me, this relates so much to what I refer to as Dawkins' map of consciousness. There's these vibrational states emotional states of frequency that rise up a continuum, which is the vertical axis. And what you talk about there at the horizontal, going out about 6 feet or whatever it is, if we're in sort of the typical societal emotional responses that sort of like exist around pride and desire and all these other things, on average it's about 6 feet. But an enlightened being, a fully enlightened being like the Buddha or Jesus, their auric field encompasses the earth. And as you go up the vertical scale and you start moving into places like peace and unconditional love, your auric field goes miles. And the greatest thing you can do in this paradigm for anyone you love, your family and society, civilization as a whole, is to raise your own vibrational field, which inevitably the formula for that is surrender, letting go of resentment, letting go of beliefs, letting go of all these things to reside in this place of being able to unconditionally love everybody, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what they do. If you're in that place, your auric field extends and extends and extends and lifts all boats up. And so it keeps coming back to this place. The material is very, very finite and the spiritual is infinite. As we keep rising up and up and up and doing this work, our capacity to change the world is unlimited.
So then I'm going to go back to the question that you asked me before, which is, do you have to go inward in order to begin this journey? And what I would say to you is, you absolutely have to go inward, because the first thing that needs to happen, well, you might say it differently, but from my perspective, the only way that you can unconditionally love is if you can unconditionally forgive. And that forgiveness starts with you. Can you unconditionally forgive yourself for believing that you needed to be, I'll use me as an example, a people pleaser in order to be of value? Can you unconditionally forgive yourself that you believe that the only way to be successful was to acquire and acquire and acquire? Can you forgive yourself for believing that you were less than fully worthy? All of those things need to happen in order for you to be able to relate to the world around you with that kind of unconditional love. If I take you back to the story that we started with Jonah, the only way that any of this opened was for me to actually see through this incredible mirror of my sister that I was diminishing my own son. And could I forgive myself for doing that? And when I did, all of a sudden, there was access to so much love.
Yeah, when you that's a really important key, is the capacity. When you forgive yourself, your capacity to love everybody else increases. And that's why compassion is passion for everybody, particularly yourself. Because once you have that, your capacity for others is huge.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
And I just I want to add just this one thing, because there's probably a very small part of our audience likes when I talk about quantum physics, but
I bet you there's a bigger there's a bigger portion than you think.
But listen, like quantum physics effectively says that the material isn't in fact real. It's not there. What it is, it's the manifestation of the quantum field based on our collective consciousness. If that collective consciousness is one of fear, desire, and apathy, that will be the manifestation that we all realize. If that manifestation is based on forgiveness, unconditional love, peace, and joy, that will be the manifestation of the world we live in. It's very simple. Where do we have the locus of control in all this? It's going inward and managing, getting our own house in order and raising our own vibration. That's the best thing we can do for the world, for ourselves, and for anybody. The rest of it is just trying to control the uncontrollable.
And I think one thing that I want to say before we close around that is that we can only open doors for ourselves. We can model the kind of behaviors that work for us with those around us by being them. But we can't force doors open for each other. We each have our own path and we each have our own journey. And the people that are in your life who aren't ready to open doors, it's because they still need to rest, because those doors are not yet accessible to them. And forcing those doors open, in my world, is spiritual bullying.
again, you're forcing doors open is in the material realm, right? The spirit will find these people when it's their time and not before. And I do know there's a big part of what we wanted to talk about we didn't get to, which was this idea, as we go inward, we often tend to be in service of others, and it's both compatible and incompatible to shift. And maybe we'll come back to that in another episode.
I think it might be a really interesting conversation for our next podcast, actually. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being with us today, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.